What's up, everybody? Sam Smyers here. So in this video, I'm going to be answering your questions that you had about the music industry, making songs, sound design, anything that you asked me on the AMAs that I'm doing on Instagram. I've been posting these to my stories, just trying to get people to provide me any questions that they had so I can answer them on my Instagram, and then just providing answers, written answers. I wanted to kind of break them down a bit more in depth in this video and put it onto YouTube. Also, if you do want to see some of these that I didn't answer, I'm going to try to get through the ones I thought were probably the most useful in this video. But if you do want to see kind of all of them, I'll put them in there's like a highlights reel on the Instagram page. On my Instagram page, there's like a little highlight box where you can put stories that you posted in the past. So you can kind of see a lot of the answers that I put in to these questions that you guys asked. So hopefully in this video, you will learn something about making music, or maybe something about the music industry that you didn't know before. And even if you just kind of get like one little thing out of this video that is useful, then I think it will be worth it. So I'm going to be just kind of reading through these off my phone. This is going to be mainly try to keep this relatively unedited. I'll probably edit a few things in here as I'm going through these questions, but try to keep this a bit more free flowing. And I'll also try to put up the questions on the screen. I'll figure out how to do that from the screenshots that I took. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Advice on deciding whether to move on from a track or finish it. So this is kind of a hard one because, as you know, most of the time you might be always moving on to another track instead of finishing it. And if that is your problem, then maybe it's time for you to decide to finish a track for once, because if you're always coming up with some idea, maybe a loop or a short little demo, and then just losing excitement about the track a few days after it and then moving on to the next one, then that is kind of probably your biggest problem that you need to fix. So there's also this thing where maybe you think that the track isn't good enough and you want to kind of move on to a better idea. But I'll kind of tell you what I have found that is useful. Something that I have done when I am making tracks is that I'll usually schedule a week or so where every night of the week I am making a song idea. So I'm always going to be making a new song idea. So let's say I start on Monday and I decide Monday through Friday, every night at 8 o'clock for 2 or 4 hours or whatever, I'm going to make a song idea. And then at the end of the night, I'm just going to save my session, export that audio, doesn't matter how far I got in the song idea, and then put it into a folder. So I'll do that for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for 5 days, put all 5 of these songs into a folder. It doesn't matter if they were good or bad or how far I got. Maybe I didn't get very far in one idea, or maybe I didn't really like it, but I kind of export all the audio files of the tracks, put them into a folder. Then at the end of the week, I have these 5 ideas, and then I'll listen to the ideas, and then I'll decide, okay, this one's bad, this one's bad, this one's bad. But maybe there's 1 or 2 of these songs where I'm like, okay, these have potential. So this is kind of like the next morning test, where you make a song the next morning, you realize it, maybe as you're making it, you're like, oh, this is awesome. And then the next morning you're like, oh, this kind of sucks. Well, this is like the next morning test, but we're doing it at the end of the week, where you're going through all 5 of these songs and you're deciding, okay, let's pick out one of these songs that I think is actually good and I still have excitement about it. And if there are multiple of these songs that you have excitement about still, then that's a good sign. And maybe you want to continue with more than one of these songs. But let's say you make 5 of these demos, then at the end of the week, you have one that you're like, this is the one that I want to continue and finish. Then you kind of put that into another folder where it's kind of like your works in progress folder. And then maybe you do this for another week where you make another 5 ideas. And then you decide, okay, here's the second song. I'm going to put this one into my works in progress. And then after that, you shift your focus instead of to generating these ideas from scratch. Then you shift your focus into working on these 1 or 2 songs for the next couple of weeks. And then you just finish those songs. You know that you had the initial excitement about them. You had the excitement after you listen to them after a week. So you have to figure out some way to finish them. And the problem with a lot of people is that they'll, and I assume that the person asking this question is that they probably move on from the tracks after they kind of get tired of them. So I think this is kind of like a way that you can eliminate all those ideas into like one or two track ideas and then try to finish them. So that's kind of like what I do. This question is, how do you come up with content ideas? Additionally, unrelated, but would you ever try to recreate dubstep? So let me just kind of answer the dubstep question. I don't really listen to too much dubstep. It's not super popular as far as like people don't really ask me to remake dubstep songs. So it's really hard for me to kind of go into that. And I think it's probably one of the more complex genres that you could pick for sound design. So I don't really know if I have any real reason to try it yet. Now, for how do I come up with content ideas? So if we're talking about things like me trying to figure out what songs to remake, like which sounds from which songs to remake, I'll usually go on to Beatport, look at the top 10 Beatport tracks, and then figure out which one of those songs I can remake sounds from. A lot of times, the tracks on the top Beatport might not have something that I can remake. Like a lot of times, the house songs on that top Beatport list there might just have like a bass and some natural instruments that I can't really like remake a synth sound from. So I'll usually start there. And then I'll also go to like New Music Friday, see if anybody released any new tracks this week that are interesting, that are kind of like more geared toward the dance genre. And then after kind of go through that, then I'll go to any like the Tech House Operator playlist on Spotify. I'll go to that playlist and see if there's any new tracks on there that they added. And that's kind of like how I come up with ideas for which songs to pick. And also I'll go through the comments of people, seeing what they comment. And a lot of times, unfortunately, the comments are from obscure songs that wouldn't really make sense for me to remake. But if it's a comment that I see other people are liking, or if it's a comment where they're asking for me to remake a song that came out within like a month or so, then I'll probably be more likely to remake that. So that's kind of what I do for doing the when I'm looking for a sound to remake. But for other content, like if I'm trying to come up with some Ableton related piece of content, then that's just a lot of like I'll open up Ableton and just see if there's any ideas that I can come up with. And a lot of it has to do with like just committing to a schedule. Like I'll put on my calendar, like today I have to post something, I'll have to post a TikTok or post a video, and just committing to a schedule of putting out content, I think will help you come up with ideas. So committing to putting out the video first and then deciding on the content second is kind of what you have to do now, because it's a lot about the volume of videos that you put out and also the consistency, like maintain some type of consistency. Because if I come up with an idea and I'm like, this idea isn't that good, then I might not post a video. It's kind of better to post a video that is a content idea where you're kind of like unsure about, you think like might not be a great idea, because you can't really predict how people are going to respond to it either. It might be an idea that you think isn't very good, and it's like, well, I have to post something today, so I'm just going to do this idea, and then maybe the video actually does well. So I think it's kind of like, for me, I try to commit to doing 3 to 5 short videos a week and then 1 YouTube video a week, and then maintain that consistency helps push me to come up with content ideas. So this question is, what do you recommend doing to help with the music production consistency grind? Now, I assume that this means that, let's assume most people are not making money full-time off of music production. So I think a lot of people have to work a day job. I think that's totally fine. That's kind of what I've done for most of my life until only recently, like only about a year ago. But if you have to work a day job, I would say to find something that's really easy and isn't so mentally stimulating that by the end of the day, you're so exhausted that you can't work on music anymore. I think that a lot of people, and I think they think that I'm going to go into a service job and wait tables or drive or do delivery. And it's like you're constantly physically working, doing that stuff. And by the end of the day, you're just like physically and mentally exhausted. So I almost would say find, like, if you have to find a day job, like find some easy 9 to 5 job where you sit in like an air conditioned office all day, so that you're just so like hungry after work to kind of get into making music and producing music. Because even if it's like you're sort of making money on music production, or like you're trying to do it as an artist, it's really hard to be motivated if you're spending all that time all day like working some kind of job. But I think if it's something where you're just sitting down at a desk, it's a lot easier to be motivated. I think that's what I did. I worked at as an assistant for a while, like at a law firm, and it was just like I knew that every day I was there by 9 and out by 5 p.m. and then after that it was like I could just focus on music all the time. But I think also, like, if you're doing a service job, you might have a different schedule and it just kind of messes up everything. It's hard to maintain some type of consistency when it's like you don't know when you're working, or like you don't know how long a shift is going to be, and the pay probably isn't that great. So I would if you can avoid it, try to avoid getting a service job, but find some kind of desk job that is kind of low mental energy, like an assistant job. And then when you get to making your music, so a lot of people will say, like, you'll see videos where it's like, my 9 to 5 is this, and then my 5 to 9 is this. Like your 5 to 9 is your kind of other side hustle job. I think you really have to treat your side hustle job like a real job. If you think about, and I got this from Steven Pressfield, had a book that was called The Art of War. No, The War of Art. He kind of flipped it. So it's called The War of Art. And I think if you read that book, it'll change the way that you think about creative work, because one of the things I took away from it that was important was that if you treat your creative work like a real job, then you'll be more successful at your creative work. A lot of people come home, they're tired, and then they make the excuse, well, I'm too tired, I'll work on it tomorrow. But you're essentially not giving your creative work the amount of like respect that it deserved, because if you don't show up to do your day job, then you'll get fired. So if you don't show up to your creative work, you have to assume like you could get fired. Like, just kind of treat it like a real job. So show up to do your creative work, no matter how tired you are, no matter like what's going on, you just have to like show up and do the work. So at like what I used to do after work, because I was working till like 5 p.m., is I would set a reminder on my phone that would go off at like 8 p.m. And then I knew that no matter what happened, had to be at my desk at 8 p.m. to work on music for like 2 hours or however many hours I could get in that night. And that was like a time for me where it's like, I knew that by 5 p.m. I would be home. I would be able to eat dinner. I would be able to like work out, get everything else I needed to get done. And by 8, so that by 8 p.m. I had nothing else to do. I could just like focus on that creative work. Also, what you can do is, and this is what I did, is I would do something where I would, at 8 o'clock, I would reward myself. So you can kind of create some kind of Pavlovian response for yourself to maintain this consistency of doing your creative work. So like if you set a time every night, then when you sit down, then you can reward yourself with something. I drink wine a lot, so I would pour myself a glass of wine at 8 o'clock, and that would be my reward, and maybe have some like chocolate or something. So that's how I would kind of reward myself and get myself more motivated to sit down and do the work and be more consistent about it every day. This question is, how can I be more creative with sounds? I think if you experiment with samples, it's a lot easier to manipulate samples and then just constantly rebounce, re-edit those samples. Like you could start with a simple vocal, like one shot or a melody, chop that up, alter it using some effects, distortion, reverb, print it to audio, slow it down, stretch it out, chop it up, put it into a sampler, do all kinds of things with it, create a melody out of it. Like once you start with this, I think just sitting down and spending a session where you're like, I'm going to spend these next 2 hours not working on a song, but I'm going to spend these next 2 hours just manipulating sounds and just make a whole session out of it where you're just being creative with the like some samples or maybe some synth sounds, and you're not really having, just try not to have any expectations for what your what the end result is, because it's like you're just trying to have fun and be creative. You're not really trying to like make a song or anything in this session. And then what you can do is you can, like, if you make a cool sound, is just save that as a one shot or like a loop or something, and then put it into your sample folder. Create a sample folder of your own samples if you don't have one already, and then just spend that 2 hours making some cool sounds, and then just save them away, and then kind of do this periodically. These sessions, I'm calling them sessions because it's like setting this time period by yourself to just get into Ableton or whatever your DAW is, and then kind of experiment with sounds. And then just always save and export the audio at the end of it, like whatever you make, just export it, put it into a folder, and then hopefully like you'll just kind of collect all these unique sounds that you made. And then when you are going to create your own music, your own songs or your own tracks, you'll have a cool selection of sounds that you made that are unique, and then you can use them in your songs, and then that will help make your songs more unique. This question is, when or how do you know when your music is good enough to be released? Well, the answer is, I don't think you ever really know. I don't think anyone ever really knows. There's this quote, I say this quote a lot. It's attributed to Leonardo da Vinci, and he says, "Art is never finished, only abandoned," which means like you just have to at some point abandon your art and release it to the world, because you could spend a whole lifetime tweaking sounds in the song or mixing the song. I think that you really just have to let it go and then move on to the next song. One thing I put in here that I liked in this answer was, your 80% is someone else's 100%. Because when, let's say you release a song and you're not super happy with like the mix down, the first time that somebody hears that song, they're either going to like it or they're not going to like it. And they're not going to be thinking about like, if they like it, it's if they don't like it, it's not going to be because of like the mix. They're just going to be there are some other reasons why they don't like it. But if they do like it, it's not going to be because of the mix either. It's going to be something with how it sounds that like touched them, that they really reacted to positively. Like you can't really explain why people like a song or don't like a song. So most of the time when we are thinking about whether the song is good enough to be released, it's always like things that we don't really have control over, that we think that we do have control over, that if I just do this to the vocal, if I just do this to the drums, if I just change this in the song, then it will like all of a sudden make people like it more. I think that this is why also sometimes like the demos of songs can become the viral song that everyone likes, because if there is some kind of bones to this song that everyone reacts to positively, then that is really all that matters. So you don't really know, you can't really predict this stuff. I think you just have to set a deadline, like a hard deadline. Let's say you're working on a song and you want to release it, but you don't know like, oh, is this good enough? Then just say, no matter what happens, I'm going to put this song out in like 4 weeks, and commit to that deadline, put the song out. If people like it, great. If they don't like it, put out another song. You can't really predict how people are going to respond to it. This one says, how do you find good vocals as a beginner that doesn't want to spend money? Well, this one's difficult, because even if you're paying for Splice, you're technically spending money every month to get vocals. The only way that I can think of getting vocals without having to spend money is just to make remixes of like bootleg remixes. And that's a pretty popular thing, common thing for DJs to do, is just find the acapella of a popular song, make a remix of it, and then post it to SoundCloud or YouTube. I think SoundCloud lately, they're trying to do a push to come back. I feel like I've been talking to some DJs that have been saying that SoundCloud is coming back. So you can definitely try to post more of your stuff to SoundCloud, like find some acapella of a popular song, or even just put the song into one of those stem separation platforms like lala.ai is what I use. And then just get the vocals out of that and then just remix it. And then that's, as a beginner, that's probably the best way to really improve your production, is just do a lot of those and put a lot of remixes out. Commit to some kind of schedule where you're putting out remixes maybe like once a month, or if you can do it even faster than that, like once every 2 weeks, if you can get on some kind of schedule where you're putting out these bootleg remixes once every 2 weeks, once a month, I think that can like really help you. And then once you kind of build up your following, because assuming you're a beginner, you probably don't have a following. Once you build up a following, as you improve your productions, let's say people start finding out about your music, then it'll be a lot easier to do collaborations from there. So collaborations, usually, like, hopefully if you're doing a collaboration with another singer who is somewhere on the same level as you, then you can just do something where you split royalties and you don't have to pay them. But I think that's a lot harder now to do, because I think a lot of singers now want to be paid. So if you're pretty young and a beginner, then hopefully just kind of starting with the remixes, the bootleg remixes, will help you grow a following. And then from there, you can reach out to other singers that are around your same level. And then you'll have a social profile where when you reach out to them, they'll see your catalog of songs that are doing well. And then your following, like maybe you have a good following as well, you build up a following, they'll kind of see some stuff that you have to back up. It's a lot harder to reach out to a singer when you have no followers, no songs out, no profile photo, like an empty profile photo. So this is all stuff you need to get like kind of done first before you start trying to get collaborations, is get some songs out, get some of those like remixes out, get your socials kind of figured out, do all that stuff before you go to the collaborations. And then after the collaborations, then you can start kind of, hopefully you can invest more, realize that your project is working, and then invest money into your project. In your opinion, can you actually make industry level quality music at home? And is skill greater than equipment? Well, I mean, this is kind of an obvious one. Most studios now are at home. Like a lot of the studios, I think Record Plant is closing, which is a big studio in LA. All these big studios are closing because nobody needs to use these studios. Everyone's just, even if it is a home studio, like it's still going to be in a bedroom. So technically it is still a bedroom that you're working in. Like maybe people have upgraded so that they're not just like in the, I mean, I'm still in my studio with my bed, or my like studio is still just my bedroom. But if I upgrade, it will just be another apartment or house that has another extra bedroom where I'll put my studio in that another bedroom, but it's still a bedroom studio. It's just like not the same bedroom that I am sleeping in. So I think most people in LA have some type of home studio, and they're all doing industry level quality music at home. So it's like, yeah, you start in your own bedroom and then you just kind of upgrade to moving it out in your studio into another bedroom, but it's still at home. And that's kind of like how everyone's been doing it. There's a cool YouTube channel called Andrew Masters. He does a lot of like home studio tours, and you can see all the stuff that people collect. And I think that a lot of times equipment is just like kind of a fun thing to have. And as you get older, you over the years collect pieces of equipment. I don't really collect too much equipment, but there are people that like to collect equipment just because it's like fun. And equipment is expensive, but if over a 20-year period you're collecting equipment that is about $1,000 to $3,000 each year, then, and over that period, you're probably going to have like $50,000 worth of equipment, but that's just because you bought it over time. So I think that when young people watch these studio tours, they see all this equipment, but it's usually guys that are a lot older or more further into their career. So if you're young and you do want to have equipment, then just save up every year, buy one piece of gear every year, and then over a long period of time, you'll have a bunch of cool stuff. All right, this question is, how can I learn to create synths with Serum like you do? Well, I have a Serum course. You can check out that Serum course where I detail everything that I know about Serum and consolidate all my years of using Serum. I started using Serum in 2017. So if you figure this is 2024, that's 7 years of using Serum. And that's how long it has taken me. I'm still trying to figure out stuff. I'm still learning stuff about the synth. And that is, so let's say like 6 or 7 years it kind of took me to really learn the synth. So you could do something where you take my course where I try to consolidate all the information that I learned into a simple course. There's probably some other courses that you can take as well. Also, just like watching YouTube tutorials about how to use the synth. And this is just like super important to know how to use the synth, the basics of using the synth. And then once you learn the basics, then that will help expand your knowledge into like recreating sounds that you like. I think the first place that you should start is downloading presets that are in a genre that you are trying to make. So downloading tech house presets, taking a preset for a bass sound, opening up the Serum for that preset, opening up another Serum that's initial preset that has nothing on it, and then just copying everything from that first preset to the second preset, copying everything from the first Serum to the second Serum, and then trying to get it to sound exactly the same. And if you can't get it to sound exactly the same after copying everything, then there's something that you're missing, and that's where you'll learn, because you got to go in deep dive into what is not making it sound the same. So that's probably the best way to really get it ahead, is just to learn how to copy presets, and that will help you learn what everything does in Serum really fast. And the once you kind of open up the first Serum, are able to copy it into a second Serum by copying all the parameters, then do it again, but without that first Serum open. So just do it from memory. So, okay, you copied everything. Now it's like, okay, now I remember, I got to do this. So just try to do it from memory without having to look at the first one. And then once you are able to copy this modulation of that and all that from memory, then you kind of like lock it in your memory, so that when you are opening up new presets and wanting to alter new presets, then you can kind of go back in your mind where you kind of put that information in your mind into memory, where you're like, I gotta change this modulation, and now you can like remember it a lot better. So that's just like something that I do every time that I make my videos. I have to write down everything, all the parameters. I write them down, and then I try to do it from memory. So I'm still doing that for like all my short little videos. So I think like that's just really important, is trying to copy presets and making sure that you're able to copy the sound exactly, and then also locking it into your memory. This one is it good to guide from other Is it good to guide from another songs? In other words, I think it just means, is it good to learn by copying other songs? And of course, this is essentially everything that I do. This is how you learn. If you think about, if you've ever played guitar or any other instrument, like if you ever learned how to play piano, they're probably going to start teaching you how to play Mozart if you're learning classical music, or maybe you want to learn a popular song. If you're learning guitar, then you're probably going to start with, like when I was learning guitar, I started with learning Blink-182 and then Metallica. And then I think it was other guitar players like Stevie Ray Vaughan or Jimi Hendrix. Like you start to learn all these popular songs. And that's just how you have to to do it to learn an instrument, and producing is essentially an instrument. And the way that you have to learn how to produce is that you have to learn how to kind of copy the drums, how to copy the synths, how to copy the mixing of the vocals. And once you do this over a long period of time for a bunch of different songs, then you kind of take everything that you learn, and then you're able to kind of output your own unique work that is kind of like kind of taking everything and inspiration from all the different types of works that you were inspired by. So one thing that I mentioned in this answer that I gave was that you're essentially just creating like a mashup of all your influences, and then that becomes your own style. And I remember I went to see an art exhibit at LACMA, which I think it was at LACMA, but it was Picasso. And Picasso, his dad was actually an art instructor, and he believed that in order to kind of improve as an artist, you had to copy the masters. So essentially copying other artists, other big artists' work. So it says, Picasso's father believed in disciplined copying of the masters and drawing the human body from live models and plaster casts. So I went to see this exhibit, and it was like Picasso over the years, and you could see like the very beginning drawings where it would say like Picasso copying this artist or Picasso copying that artist, and they were just like sketch drawings. And then you could see over the years, after he started copying and copying, he would do like sculptures and stuff, learning how to do all this stuff by copying other artists that were popular at the time. He began to develop his own style that was unique to him. And this is kind of the goal for you is hopefully after copying enough work of other artists and doing that to learn, that you develop your own style. What part of the song do you usually start with? Lead, chords, bass, or drums? For me, I like to start with first of all, I pick the BPM because that kind of determines what type of song it's going to be. If it's going to be a house song, I know the BPM. If it's going to be a reggaeton song, I know the BPM. So I'll pick the BPM, and then I will create the bass line, because a lot of times the bass line is going to be the most important part, especially for like house music. And then from the bass line, I can build the chords off of the bass line. And then usually if I know the genre, I know what the drums are going to sound like. So I'll kind of add in maybe the drums after the bass line, and then the chords after the drums, like adding the chords on top of the bass line. So yeah, I like starting with the bass line, especially like because I play guitar, and a lot of times when I would come up with songs on guitar, I would just like play a single note on the guitar, and then try and come up with like some kind of rhythm just playing a single note, and then after that I could like come up with the chords after playing that single note on the guitar. So I think like it's almost like just playing a bass guitar and then building the song around that bass guitar. This question is, want to pursue my music career but afraid I'll fail and work at Walmart for the rest of my life. What's your advice? Well, I don't know if he means like he doesn't want to work at Walmart, or if he is working at Walmart currently. I think it's like, if you're working at Walmart currently, you could either work at Walmart and pursue your music career as well, or just work at Walmart and not pursue your music career. You're always going to be working at Walmart. Insert whatever your job is now in there. Like, it doesn't have to be Walmart. You could just say like your software engineering job. Like, you could work at your software engineering job and pursue your music, or you could just work at your software engineering job and not pursue music. Like, either way, you're kind of stuck at that job doing that work that maybe you don't want to do. And if you want to get out of it, you might as well just like pursue music on the side. And like I was saying that earlier, is that you have to kind of commit to treating your music work as a full-time job as well, or like treat it as a job, but I know it's not like a full-time job as well, because you don't have time because you're actually working a full-time job, but treat it seriously. Because if you are working a day job, like, just pursue your music career as well until you're able to make enough money off of your music career. And it's good to have a day job because then you can pay to do music things. Like for me, it was useful to have a day job because I was able to pay for vocalists when I wanted them to sing on a song. Like when I first moved to LA, I made the mistake of just like not having a job for the first year or two, but then I couldn't really do anything because I didn't have any money to pay singers. I didn't have any money to kind of like test out mixing engineers. But then I got a day job and it was like so much easier for me to actually put songs out because I had money to put hire singers, like good vocalists, and pay them money. So I think like having a day job is actually helpful to your music career. And I think it's like if you're 20 something years old, like life is really long. If you're probably going to live till you're 80, 70 or 80, like if something terrible, tragic doesn't happen, you're going to live for a long time. So life is a really long time. And I just couldn't imagine living another 50, 60 years being afraid of not pursuing your music career. So I think it's like, even if it took you 10, 20 years of your life to, let's say you hustled for 10, 20 years of your life and then it took that long, like that's still, if you're 21 and you spent 20 years and you're 41, yeah, I mean, you're not the prime age for being in the music industry, but let's say you all of a sudden make it as a hit songwriter, or you all of a sudden make it as a DJ at like 41. You're not gonna be some young pop artist, obviously, like at that age. So it's also about pivoting. Like if you want to work in the music industry, you have to also pivot and realize what your strengths are. Like unfortunately for the music industry, it's a very young centered industry. And like, as you age out of it, you have to kind of figure out what other things you can do, because there's just a lot of things that you can do. You just have to be broaden your scope of what you want, what you would be happy with doing. Because like, obviously for me, when I was younger, I wanted to be in a band and make it in a band when I was in high school. But then it's like, then I got into my mid 20s and it's like, okay, I can't really be in a band anymore. I got to like go produce or be a DJ or do music production. And that's kind of like what I'm doing now, is more so like music production focused stuff and sound design. So it would be pretty terrible if you're like asking me this question now. What if I'm afraid to pursue my music career, but I'm afraid to fail, and you're 21 and then you got to spend the next 50 to 60 years regretting that decision that you made. So just make that decision now and work hard at it, because it would be sad that if you're 70 or 80 and you look back at your life and you could have just spent, because if you're 80 years old and you spent back and you look back at your life, I mean, it's like you might as well just have spent however long it would have taken to get to where you wanted to be in your music career. And if like 20 years if you're 21, 20 years seems like a long time, but if you're 80, 20 years does not seem like a long time. So there's this like effect where the older that you get, 1 year of time doesn't seem like that long. So I know that being like a 20 something year old, me saying like spend 10, 20 years like doing this, it seems like a long time, but like that's just all you have to do. I think it took me, in order to be able to quit my job, I've been doing music for like 20 years, working a day job for the past 8 years or so. And this is only the first year where I'm actually making my entire living off of music. It's taken me like 20 years. This question is, how can I completely overcome creative block? Now, this is a quote from The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. He said, someone once asked Somerset Maugham, who's an author, if he wrote on a schedule or only when struck by inspiration, and he responded, I write only when inspiration strikes. He replied, fortunately, it strikes every morning at 9 o'clock sharp. And this is just stating the importance of finding a time to do your creative work and really committing to that time. For me, it was like 8 p.m. every night. I would just commit to that to get into doing this work. And I don't think that having a creative block is like really a real thing. I think it is almost just like excuse-itis, where you're just kind of making up some kind of excuse for not doing the work. But if you just every day set a time every day that you can commit to just sitting at your desk. And then I sit at my desk and I have this stupid timer thing, and I'll just like set this timer for 60 minutes. And if you just sit at your desk, set a timer for 60 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever you want, and just sit there, then that inspiration may strike, it may not strike. But if you do it consistently, let's say over a week, maybe 3 out of 7 of those days, you actually came up with something that was useful. That's a lot further along than you would have gone if you didn't spend any days sitting at your desk because you said you had a creative block for that week, so you didn't do any work. Ultimately, I think that saying you have creative block is just really a form of procrastination. So like I was saying, set a time every day that you can really commit to getting this work done. Treat it like a job. If you don't show up, you'll get fired. And give yourself some kind of treat or something. Maybe eat a piece of candy when you sit down to reward yourself, so that you create almost like a pleasant response in your brain to sitting down to get ready to do the work. And sometimes you'll set a timer for like 15 minutes if that's all you can do. But then maybe after 15 minutes, you really get into a flow. Then continue on and keep on working. If you don't get into the flow, stop, because you sat down, you committed to doing the time, and nothing came out of it. But like, if you feel good and want to continue, then continue. And a lot of times you'll continue on and work longer than you thought you could. Was there one thing that drastically helped you improve at producing? So the one thing that I can think of is that I used Logic for like the longest time, and Logic Pro has a lot of really cool stuff for composing and a lot of like really cool instruments. But I really wanted to make electronic music, and I wanted to move into using Ableton because everyone that was making electronic music was doing it in Ableton. And so I just committed to only using Ableton at one point. And I realized that if I just said that anytime I want to work on a new song, I would only start creating that, opening up a new Ableton session. I would just like stop using Logic completely. I wouldn't go to Ableton, try to use Ableton, and then be like, oh, I can't figure this out, and go back to Logic. I would just only use Ableton. I spent like a whole year trying to figure out Ableton. And also in Ableton, like I didn't have any good instruments. There weren't really good things in Ableton. Like I had to use a lot of samples. And I think that helped a lot, is that I didn't have a lot of like good VST instruments in Ableton. Because in Logic, I thought there were like a lot of good ones that came stock with it. And so when I started using Ableton, I just had to start manipulating samples and learning how to use samples a lot more instead of using like MIDI. And I think that helped a lot with my production. Any tips for beginner artists in regards to mixing, mastering, a rule of thumb, or anything? Well, I think that if you are a producer as well, focus more on the production and not the mixing and mastering. A lot of mixing and mastering engineers that are the top pro mixing and mastering engineers get the songs already done so well that they don't really have to do too much. Like, it's all about the production of these songs. And if you just spend more time improving your production, then ultimately the mixing and mastering will come after that. And it won't even really matter. Like, if you have a well-produced song that sounds really good, it doesn't really matter too much if the mix isn't all that great. Focus on that production first. Don't worry too much about the mixing and mastering. I think that a lot of people focus on, oh, I need to get this song mixed and mastered, and then all of a sudden it will become a good song. But that definitely is not true. And I know this because I mix and master for people. And ultimately, like, when I do that, I try to keep the mixing close to their original demo, because I think a lot of people really just like their song to sound how they made it originally, but just maybe a little bit different, a little bit cleaner. But it's not going to make the song, it's not going to make or break the song. And I think I made this mistake in early on because I felt like I was making some songs and I was like, I don't really feel confident about mixing and mastering. I'm just going to hire somebody, and I paid a mixing engineer, and it just like was a really terrible experience. And then after that happened, I just started improving my production, and then eventually just started releasing my songs on my own, mixing and mastering them on my own. And it was like, it doesn't really matter too much about the mix. If the song is good enough, then it should like, hopefully like the production will help a lot if you kind of like focus on learning how to improve your production. And if you're an artist, and I don't know who asked this question, if he's also a producer, if you're an artist who doesn't also produce, then just try to find a good producer who doesn't need to outsource the mixing and mastering. Advice for releasing first tech house track. Should I send to labels or self-release? So what I said is set a deadline for when you want to release it, then find labels that release tech house and email them. Most likely you won't get a response. And this is why I'm just saying, when you finish a song, set a release date. So let's say I finish a song, I'm going to set a release date for 6 weeks from now. In that time, I'm going to reach out to these labels, see if they want to sign it. But now I have a whole period of time where it's like, I have a release date. I need to contact these labels. I need to send the song to DJs. Go to 1001tracklist.com, find DJs that are posting their sets on there that are like tech house DJs, or they're putting tech house sets on 1001 Tracklist. Put together a spreadsheet of like the contact emails or Instagrams of these DJs. Hit them up. If you don't have their email, contact them on Instagram. Ask if they have a promo email that you can send your demo to. So if you see a DJ that has a set list on 1001 Tracklist, you find them on Instagram, DM them, hey, do you have a promo email I can send a demo to? I think ask for that email first. I'm not sure if you should just say, hey, listen to my song, because I think that stuff is like, no DJ is gonna, I mean, I don't like that when people do that. Like, I'm not just gonna click on your song because you sent me your song, but it's like, if you asked me, for me, like a lot of people ask me for feedback, and if someone asked me like, hey, do you give feedback? I would be like, yeah, go to this link and I'll send them a link where they can send their feedback. But if they just send me their track in a DM, hey, can you listen to this? Hey, what can you give me feedback? Like, I'm probably not gonna like listen to it unless it's somebody that I know. And a lot of times it's not from somebody that I know. So if you're gonna reach out to somebody, contact them through, try to find the correct channel to contact them on it. So like their promo email, or if they have some kind of show, maybe their show email, like if they have a radio show. And then once you do that, you contact the labels, you contact the DJs, you just start promoting your song on all the platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Reels. Look at how other tech house DJs are promoting their songs. Find some tech house songs that went viral, gained a lot of popularity. Like, I know that MK and Dom Dollar are big DJs, but someone teased their song Rhyme Dust, which they weren't going to put out, but then it became like really popular on TikTok, and then they had to figure out a way to clear the sample and then put it out. So if you can find some way to get a song to go viral, then you can find a way to get the rights cleared. Like if it is using a sample, I think Disco Lines did that too with the song. He used a vocal from Donald Glover, and he was able to actually, the song went so viral that he was able to clear the actual vocal in his song and then put it onto streaming services. I would also check out Hyped Edit, which is this platform that a lot of people use for SoundCloud. I use it to provide free downloads, and you can post your track on there. Like, so post your track onto SoundCloud, post a Hyped Edit link, and then they have their own like charting system, and maybe you can chart on that Hyped Edit. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Hyped It. think maybe that's how I say it. Maybe you can chart on there, and then that will help your song gain some kind of popularity among other DJs and maybe help it go viral. And then let's say you put out your song. So you post it to DistroKid. Then after you even release your song on all these streaming platforms, you can still keep doing all the same things that I said. You could still reach out to labels. If your song goes viral, then these labels will start reaching out to you. So just put out the song and then try to keep promoting it by reaching out to DJs and posting it to social media. Advice for when you think a song idea has potential, but you can't figure out what it needs. So what I like to do is I'll take a break from the song. And when I say take a break, I don't mean put the song in a folder and then ignore it for a whole year and then come back to it and be like, oh yeah, that song was so good. I mean, just take a 1 day break where so let's say on Monday, I make the song, can't figure out, or I'm just working on the song on Monday, I can't figure out what it needs. Tuesday, I'm just going to put on a playlist of a bunch of songs that are in the style of the song that I'm making. So if I'm making a tech house song, maybe on Tuesday, I'll just start listening to a bunch of music on Spotify, in tech house or any genre of any genre. Just start listening to other music and make it intentional, the way that you're listening to the music. Don't just casually listen to music. Make it very intentional. I'm going to be listening to music today, but I want to find things in the songs that I'm listening to that I can apply to the song that I was working on. So maybe you're just driving, but you're listening to music and you're kind of thinking about the songs, and maybe you'll discover something in one of the songs that you're hearing on a playlist while you're driving. And then you can say, oh, I can maybe try that on my song that I was working on. Maybe you're listening to music at the gym, you have it on a playlist, but you're listening to it with intent where you're thinking, okay, I'm working out, but I'm listening to this music and I want to find something in the music that I'm listening to that I can apply to the song that I was working on. And so maybe over the period of a day or two after listening to a bunch of music, and maybe taking notes also on the notes app on your iPhone, just oh, that bass sound from that Dom Dollar track, or the effect sound from that John Summit track, take some notes as you're listening to other songs. And then when you go back to your original songs, set a timer for an hour and be okay, for this 1 hour, I'm going to try these things and then just see if any of that stuff works out. And then if none of it works out after that hour, just try again. And maybe after that hour of spending time working on the song, maybe you come up with something cool that you heard from any of these other songs, and then that just helps you make progress with the song. And then also if you think it has potential and you're not sure what it needs, but you still want to release it, then just release it and see what happens. Because maybe you're just doubting yourself, and sometimes just putting the song out kind of relieves you from that doubt, because then you find out people like it, and the song actually didn't need anything else. So put the song out and then move on, work on another song. So those are all the questions for today. I hope that you got some kind of value out of this video. If you do want to ask me any questions on my AMAs, I usually post them on my Instagram. So make sure that you do follow me on Instagram. And also, if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and like it and subscribe if you are not yet subscribed. And if you'd like to check out any of my senior preset packs, head on over to store.sansmyers.com.